For the better part of a century, if you thought about cutting-edge science, you thought about American universities. They were, without a doubt, the global leaders. But something huge is happening right now, a seismic shift that's completely reordering the world of innovation. So let's dive into the data behind one of the biggest geopolitical stories of our time, the incredible rise of China's universities. For the longest time, the thinking was pretty simple. Sure, China was publishing a ton of research, but the really important, groundbreaking stuff, that was still happening in the West. It was a comfortable idea that quality would always beat quantity. But as the Quincy Institute puts it right here, that assumption just doesn't hold up anymore. Those days are over. And this is the number that tells the whole story. 37,273. In 2024, that's how many articles China published in the world's absolute most elite, high-impact science journals, the ones tracked by the very prestigious Nature Index. And for the first time, that number blew right past what the United States published. This isn't just about publishing a lot of papers anymore, this is about leading at the very frontier of science. All right, so let's really dig into what these numbers are telling us, because the data makes it crystal clear that this shift isn't something that's going to happen, it's already here. The scientific world is being reordered, and the toughest, most rigorous metrics are all confirming it. I mean, the speed of this is just staggering. Think about this. Just a few years ago, back in 2020, the US was still ahead by more than 50% in these same elite journals. So what happened? How on earth did China close that huge gap and then surge ahead in just a couple of years? Well, it wasn't an accident. It was a plan. Yeah, this didn't just happen overnight. It's the result of a very deliberate, very focused national strategy, one that's been fueled by decades of absolutely massive investment in higher education. So let's unpack that master plan. Okay, so this whole thing really kicked off way back in the mid-90s. First, there was Project 211, which was designed to boost about 100 key universities. Then, just a few years later, Project 985 came along, which was even more ambitious. The goal there was to create a small, super elite group of schools, the C9 League, to go head-to-head with America's Ivy League. And more recently, the double first-class plan has just poured more fuel on that fire. This has been a state-driven marathon, not a sprint. And the amount of money we're talking about and where it was aimed, it's just mind-boggling. China essentially created a tiered system and then poured unbelievable resources into a handful of top universities. I mean, look at this. By 2016, researchers at these elite schools were getting nearly 3 times the funding per person as their colleagues at other universities. It's a strategy of concentration, betting big on your best. And all that investment has created a massive advantage in what really matters: people. By 2025, Chinese universities are on track to graduate almost double the number of STEM PhDs as the United States. And if you take international students out of the US number, that gap becomes more like 3-to-1. This pipeline of talent is the absolute bedrock of future innovation. Okay, but this story is so much bigger than just university rankings. This academic shift has some really profound geopolitical consequences, and it's reshaping the global balance of power as we speak. And you don't have to guess at the strategy. President Xi Jinping laid it out pretty clearly with this quote. For Beijing, this isn't just about academic bragging rights. Scientific leadership is a core part of national power, and it's seen as a central battlefield in the competition between great powers. The goal has always been right there in the open. And here's why this matters so much. The scientific breakthroughs getting published in journals today, they're literally the blueprints for the technologies that will define our future. China's dominance in fields like chemistry, physical sciences, and material science puts it in the driver's seat for critical future industries. We're talking quantum computing, advanced batteries, next-gen semiconductors, the whole shebang. So you have this shift in science, and you can bet there's a huge economic shift right behind it. Economists like Danny Kwa are now predicting that as the leadership in innovation moves east, the entire economic center of gravity of the world is going to follow, and it could happen a full decade earlier than anyone thought. Okay, but to get the real story, we have to look at the whole picture here. So let's dig into some of the nuance behind these numbers, because it's not quite as simple as China winning everything. So while China has taken the overall lead, it's not across the board. Its dominance is really concentrated in areas like chemistry, physical sciences, and environmental sciences. The US, on the other hand, still has a really strong lead in the biological and health sciences, thanks to decades of massive investment from places like the National Institutes of Health. And we have to acknowledge some of the valid criticisms, too. There are real concerns about things like citation stacking, where researchers just cite each other's work over and over to game the metrics. There have also been reports of straight-up fraudulent data coming from so-called paper mills. And of course, a ton of vital research in the US happens in the private sector, at companies like Google or Pfizer, and that doesn't always show up in these university-focused rankings. But look, even when you factor in all those critiques, and they are important, the fundamental trend is just undeniable. It's not just one ranking or one data set telling this story. All the major independent databases, from the Nature Index to Web of Science to Scopus, they all show the exact same remarkable trajectory. The rise is real. So, what does this all add up to? Where do we go from here? Well, we are entering a totally new era in global science, one that looks very, very different from the world we've known for the last 75 years.
And really, this is the bottom line. The era of singular, unchallenged American leadership in science that started after World War II, that era is ending. We are now in a multipolar world with at least two scientific superpowers.
And that leaves us with a huge question for the 21st century. As this new landscape takes shape, are these scientific superpowers going to see each other as rivals in a zero-sum game? Or will they find a way to collaborate to solve the biggest challenges facing all of humanity? The answer to that question is going to define our future.